What's going on, everybody? This is Mike, and this is Serial at Night, episode number 53, and back again today to talk about some Sony news and some Nintendo news. So we've got two items. Nintendo came out, and Eurogamer reported it looks like we might be getting two new versions of the Nintendo Switch in 2019, and we also had a Nintendo Direct-like presentation from Sony called State of Play. And it's funny that we got both of these in a week, because I think it's getting big Nintendo news and then having Sony try to kind of do something very Nintendo-like and taking over their own messaging through, a direct-style presentation. I think it's a good time to compare and contrast. That's kind of where I actually want to start. I want to start out with the Sony presentation. I want to start out with the overall reception of gamers. Excuse me. And once again, gamers go ahead and just prove why we can't have nice things. And it's mostly due to the fact that, again, we live in this era where everyone wants to be the next big YouTuber. Everybody wants to have an opinion. Everybody wants the cutting edge take. And in doing so, they sound like a pile of jackasses. Right? It's all about the hot take. I don't mind reactions. Shit, I'm doing a podcast right now, and I'm going to give you my opinions. Right? I think having an opinion to news and trying to discuss that's a good thing. Where we get into a problem is just this hyperbole of everybody, trying to have the hottest take on the internet, right? Or have some opinion some hot take that somebody else didn't have, right? And for the Sony presentation, it went like this. Sony came out and did a state of play. I thought it was a nice presentation. I thought they came out with a very straightforward, focus on what they were going to show. They announced and showed a few good games. They put a real big focus on VR, which I was excited about, despite not having a PlayStation VR. They showed some Days Gone gameplay and some Mortal Kombat gameplay. It was a nice package, right? Hey, here's what's coming up. Here's some things you don't know about. Here's some things you do know about, but hey, take a deeper look. Right? 20 minutes, in and out. It's fine. I certainly have some criticism. So I've put together presentations like this for companies where you have to find you might not have somebody on staff. I don't know if Sony, I'm sure Sony probably, again, Sony has their choice of any voice actor, voice over person on the planet. But I wasn't in love. I thought it was a little dry just based on the VO work that was done for the presentation. Now, that said, it certainly didn't ruin it for me. But man, some of this stuff certainly did ruin it for a lot of gamers. I've seen some dumb reactions in the past, but I mean, this thing was, people were evaluating this state of play against kind of two things. It almost seemed like they were expecting like an E3 level presentation here, and B, they're announcing it against, kind of comparing it against the Nintendo Directs, which for all intents and purposes are pretty good presentations. Granted, they haven't always been that way. They haven't always been great. And so there seemed to be a general disappointment in the presentation style. There seemed to be a general disappointment in the games that were announced. There seemed to be a general disappointment in kind of everything related to the presentation. I just say, what the hell? I mean, it got to the point where Sony uploaded the video right after the presentation ended, and it still had the kind of live stream, the countdown in it. And then later on, Sony had replaced that video with a version that didn't have that. right? And that's common. Nintendo does this. Everybody does this, right? And actually, I mean, the Inside Xbox is another comparable presentation, right? This isn't uncommon to do this on YouTube to get that crap out of there because you can't edit it in time, right? So you want to do the live stream, you want to get it on YouTube, you want to get it archived, so if people missed it, people can get right into it right away. But certainly, you want to get a better, edited version that clips that stuff up later. So what does the internet do? Everybody grabs on and starts yelling about Sony just did this to remove, Sony did this to remove the negative feedback on the other video because they all of the thumbs down or whatever. Like, guy, that's just this rush to have this hot take. Like, again, the gamers, the smartest people in the room. It's fucking absurd to me. Just calm down, guys, gals, everybody. Right? I get it that you maybe weren't impressed with the presentation, but like just jumping to those extents, like Sony just came out for 20 minutes, showed you some games you're going to get to play, especially if you have a PSVR, to close out what's going to be this generation of hardware for them. I had no problem with it. I don't know what people thought they were going to get. I don't know where the expectations were coming from because it came out of nowhere. And people were pissed. It's stupid. Calm down. I mean, this is my exact reason of why I'm staying off Twitter, except to just post this show for now, right? Because I turned into one of those jackasses, but B, it's Twitter's a cesspool for reactions like that, and unfortunately, the entire gaming's coverage and gaming media is a cesspool for reactions like that. So hopefully, in these podcasts that I'm going to be doing, I can provide some levity to just the absolute jackassery that is gaming's coverage in 2019. So let's take with that, let's take a look at what Sony did announce, because I'd rather talk about the presentation on the merits of what they actually showed rather than comparing it to a Nintendo Direct, right? Because the difference is we all know, and this is true. People always get overexcited for anything at any Nintendo Direct, right? And Nintendo does a really nice job. They provide something for everybody. Nintendo always has some great games. They've gotten back into the game with a lot of JRPGs, indie, so on and so forth. Nintendo does some great stuff. I'm not gonna lie. But for the most part, it doesn't excite me. But I'm moving forward, I'm not gonna run out and crap on it. So start off the show, Sony kind of explained the state of PlayStation and ran through some kind of some sizzle stuff and just a quick what it is, and then they moved on to show Iron Man on PSVR. That looks amazing. Let me say this. So this was a VR heavy focus show. Unfortunately, I don't have a PSVR because all my equipment's in a kind of a central media closet. So yeah, I've got a split entry, and I've got a closet right under the stairs that's like dead center in the middle of the house. So I can run. So I've got my receiver in there, my PS4, my Xbox, my PS3, my Xbox 360, my Wii U, my Switch. I've got a few other things plugged into there. I've got a pretty ridiculous AV unit. And so on the far left of half of my house, I've got my office. And so I run my PC into that also. So it's long story short. And then I run, that AV, one of the HDMI outs to one of my OLEDs downstairs. And I run one of the outs to one of the OLEDs upstairs. And it's nice. But because of that, I have some limitations on some of the stuff that I can actually have. And PSVR is one of those. When they remove the USB from kind of the PlayStation camera, it took me out of the game because they didn't have an extender long enough, and I just didn't want the cables running and didn't want to hook it up all the time, so on and so forth. So, because I would have needed to get, long story short, I would have needed to get, like a 12-foot extender, and it just wouldn't have worked for how my setup was in the basement. That said, I love to see. I do have VR on PC, and I do love to see VR being pushed forward. in this podcast was in this not podcast, this presentation, this state of play was great for that, right? So I come out of the gate with Iron Man. I'm like, are you kidding me? Iron Man would be incredible in VR. Like, and this is just one of those experiences. I don't even care if it's a full game. You know, I actually like the Batman VR. You're telling me I can strap up as Iron Man and just fly around and blast on a few things? Like, I want that. Like, I don't want it at $60. I paid $20 to strap that thing on and fly around as Iron Man and start blasting things. You know, maybe there's a little light story. Who knows? That sounds like a ton of fun. Right? Then they moved on. I'm not going to hit on everything, but they showed, you know, the new Crash Team Racing coming out. You know, after the show, it was announced there's going to be some more exclusive Sony stuff. That's great. Everybody's been, you know, wanting that, requesting that. So we got it. We got more information on it. We got some more gameplay. Looks great. No Man's Sky VR. They hit on that. PS4, and it looks like it's going to hit Steam. I'm also excited for that. I liked the updates they did to No Man's Sky. I think when that got announced, all of us were like, if that could be VR, that's great. Then they ran through a variety of other games that are going to be in VR. Good. You know, it shows a big VR push focus. I thought that was fine to do. There wasn't anything jaw dropping for me, but I as a VR fan, it was nice to. It's, you know, what's really nice as far as Sony doing this. It's nice to see Sony still keeping VR in the mainstream at an really kind of an affordable price for those that want to touch it, because we're not getting that from really Valve or Oculus or even Windows, you know, with the mixed reality headsets, which is my preference. So it's nice to see this stuff get pushed. And we did get an announcement of a game from Devolver Digital. So it was like a space station game called Observation. I don't know if this, I couldn't find out if this was PSVR or not. So if I missed it, someone let me know. But it looked pretty cool. I mean, it is what it is, and Five Nights at Freddy's, so on and so forth. Then we got more information about Days Gone, and then some Mortal Kombat gameplay. You know, so overall, you know, there's not again, I'm looking at it and going, there's not a lot here for me to be angry at. You know, they weren't gonna, you know, they didn't come out and announce any PS Now stuff, which maybe was where people were disappointed. You know, they didn't come out and talk about the PS5 and any of this stuff. I'm sure they have something that they're ready to either drop the bomb right before E3 and kind of set the stage, or they're going to let E3 happen. Let Microsoft get out there with their presentation. Google's been out with a presentation. Get everything out of the way. I think Sony's going to be pretty calculating, in my opinion, is they're going to come out after E3, after all of those announcements are on the board, and they're going to try to counter every punch that Microsoft, Google, Valve, whoever else, you know, is announcing stuff at E3 starts to throw. Excuse me, a little stuff you did. That's where I think it's coming from. Yeah, that's what I think is going to happen. But again, I don't understand this constant, just hate on just every damn announcement. Everybody needs to calm down. It just seems ridiculous to me. The fucked up part, I Googled state of play and went to videos on Google because I wanted to kind of just run through it again quick this morning before having this podcast. And the top videos in Google weren't links to the presentation. It was links to everybody having their conspiracy theories about why they deleted the video, and links to, you know, people, you know, watch the state of play, right? The live reactions. Get the live reactions right here. It wasn't like the actual presentation wasn't even in the top of kind of the search for Sony's video, the Google videos, which is absurd to me. We've gotten to a point where I just want to go watch the fucking video, and everybody's hot takes and reactions are first. God, it's honestly just disappointing. So anyway, speaking of announcements, turns out we're looking at 2 new Switches this year. And I've been vocal about, I don't want to call it disappointment in the Switch, maybe. Well, it's been disappointing maybe for me. I'm not going to get into all that. I don't want to have this huge hot argument about why the Switch maybe just hasn't held my attention like it has for other people. But I do want to say that I am glad it's doing well. I think it is a good, great platform. I think it's opening games up that a lot of people miss that weren't going to play some of those indies on PC. You know, want something that they can take with them. Still love Nintendo games, right? It's a great package. We know all the great things about the Switch. For me personally, I've played a lot of those games. I know Jeff on Giant Bomb I think shares probably pretty close to the same opinions that I do, because every time he talks about it, he's kind of in the same spot. But he said something along the lines of, yeah, he didn't take his Switch with him on a trip because he's playing all those games elsewhere. And that's kind of where I'm at. Like if a game comes out, like the handheld portability piece of it just isn't that huge to me. And I'm really just, I would love to play the Switch more kind of around the house and in bed, but I just, the Joy-Cons I feel are so poor that I don't want to actually use it in handheld mode, especially with, the HD rumble is just infuriating. Golf Story had it. I couldn't play Golf Story on the Switch because of that fucking HD rumble. I think they did patch it in that you could later turn it off because it was so overwhelming. Like every button press, it had a damn rumble. But anyway, I digress. So that comes to our Switch announcement. So it looks like they're going to roll out two models. One model is going to be a budget-focused model along the lines of maybe the 2DS. Maybe Joy-Cons aren't detachable. Not a lot of news there. Not a lot of news for either of these. And then it looks like they're going to have more of a enthusiast, focused release that's going to maybe have a little more power. Maybe hopefully better Joy-Cons, maybe a better screen. Who knows how they're going to, I'm sure there's going to be a better screen. That screen that they threw into the original Switch. I mean, there's LCD LED technology is to the point where you can get a better quality screen that actually uses less battery for probably quite a bit cheaper than whatever that screen is that they're using. And I think they're using like an odd resolution too. So I'm sure they can drive down price while improving the screen. So we'll see. And I'd like to see that too. And I think what's coming up is there's this weird, there's a lot of questions around it. And this is the one point where I think, oddly enough, gamers are a little more apprehensive about what Nintendo's trying to offer here because, I liked the 2DS. I actually bought one of the kind of doorstop 2DSs. I thought it was great. And I think it's a nice budget-friendly version, right? I actually got it. So when my daughter got, old enough, if I didn't want her banging around my Switch, I could just throw her that. And then, as far as a high performance one, I think that's along the lines of that new 3DS. And there's question marks there because the new 3DS didn't get a lot of support. And the support that it got, was kind of shitty on the base 3DS. So let's jump into the budget one a little more. So it sounds like they're going to remove rumble. Sounds like the analog controls are going to be attached to the system. There's no news if it's going to be dockable. There's no news on size, anything like that. But I think if history can tell us anything, we know that it's going to be an affordable alternative to the Switch that's going to come with limited features and probably smaller screen sizes, so on and so forth. Maybe maximize portability by maybe having a little bit better battery life, so on and so forth, just based on the fact that it's going to be all contained. I'm all for this. I think there's a lot of people that, look, Nintendo stuff, regardless of what people want to admit, Nintendo stuff items are a luxury purchase. Like, it's not cheap, right? The Switch is still $300. You add a Pro controller or some of the accessories or a case or screen protectors or a new SD card, whatever it might be, and you're easily into the $400 range, $450 range, right? If you can take any of that, entry level off the top, especially for somebody that, doesn't need to dock it, or docking it's not a priority, right? You take the dock out of that situation, it's going to be cheaper. Or maybe a family that has multiple children and they just can't afford the cost of buying a Switch for, 2-3 kids, whatever that might be. I think having that option is certainly a great move for Nintendo. And quite honestly, when they first announced it, again, gamers were so disappointed. What the hell are they doing making a budget version? We need more power, right? I'll get to that later. But why? Because Nintendo's market is to sell more Switches and migrate users, right? If you have legacy users that still haven't moved over from the 3DS, Your number one strategic priority is probably going to be the migration of those legacy users, the users of your legacy platform to the new platform. 100%. Get them into the new ecosystem. Again, this isn't difficult to understand, right? We have users of legacy product. We need to move them to the new product. This happens in every line of business. Every job that I've had in the last 10 years, at least, is but the buzzword digital first, digital transformations have come online. It doesn't matter if I've been in healthcare, finance, or software media development, right? Everything is, we need to move users from legacy ecosystems within our infrastructure to the modern systems that we're using, right? It's no different for Nintendo. So they need to get users moved over. Makes a ton of sense. So I'm all on board for that. I don't think I might buy one of those just because I have a daughter and I don't want her banging around my expensive Switch. Now, to the high performance Switch. There's a few things that can happen here, and there's not a lot of information. So, again, there's some skepticism about Nintendo's ability to support a higher end system because of what happened with the new 3DS. I don't have that. I don't have that concern right now. I think we're in a different, even though it's only been a few years, I think we're in a different landscape right now where developers are making their games scalable. They have so many endpoints with iterative systems now. PC support's been better. The systems and hardware is much more PC-like, even with the Switch where it's more mobile phone-like. Everything is being built with scalability in mind at this point. And I just don't think it's going to be as difficult as people might think now for, games to come out at multiple SKU levels as we're already seeing, right? If Mortal Kombat or whatever comes out on a PS4 and a PS4 Pro and a Xbox One S and an X and so on and so forth, like once you get it scaling in one way or another, dropping it up and down to other platforms, it's not click a button, file export, but being in software development, once you start to get that stuff working, depending on the SDK, it's not absolutely as difficult as people try to make it out to be. There's always some people that just want to really make it out as the most difficult thing in the world. It just becomes part of the roadmap for releasing games, releasing software. So I'm excited for that. I think there is an appetite for, better performance out of the Switch or better screens, and we'll have to see what that looks like. What I can tell you is what you're not going to get is an Xbox One X in a handheld. Like, it's just not possible. As technology gets better, demands get higher. Like, you might, 2-3 years from now, that technology might fit in a Switch. But when it comes to battery life and powering this stuff, the handheld's never going to compete. It's just not possible based on, having to put huge batteries in to support that stuff. I mean, I'm assuming you can do it, but the more power you put in, the less portable something's going to need to become. But with that, my biggest complaints about the Switch have never been the power of it. I always thought that and maybe it's different for me because I go to Nintendo for Nintendo games, and maybe that's why I've just been a little disappointed. I haven't been in love with any of the Nintendo first-party games that have come out yet. You don't argue with me about it. It's just how I feel. I'm glad everybody else is enjoying them. But I go to Nintendo for the Nintendo first-party stuff, and I've been a little disappointed there. But the biggest part that's bothered me is, like, I would use my Switch more if it wasn't for the god-awful Joy-Cons. And I don't like the analog sticks. The buttons feel fine. I don't like the HD Rumble, feels like garbage. The fact that there's no D-pad, and I've had to explain. Brian Eltano we were going back and forth on Twitter a few months back. I don't know why this is so hard for people to understand either, but they had the 2 Joy-Cons and the 4 buttons, so they were kind of, so they could be used split for, games like Mario Kart and NBA and Snipper Clips and whatever the hell else. And so the controllers were similar, right? Each D-pads, or each controller separated, had 1 analog stick and 4 buttons and a couple shoulder buttons. What I was trying to tell everybody, there's no reason that you couldn't have a fully functioning left D-pad where it couldn't still be detached and used the same way, right? Just because one's a D-pad and one has buttons doesn't mean the D-pad can't function as the buttons. You know what I mean? So if the left Joy-Con had a D-pad, up would be X, left would be Y, down would be B, right would be A. Right? Or, you know, if it's detached or it's turned, then maybe I haven't used them detached that often, so I don't remember how it works. But that it's just not that hard. You could still do that. Like that's literally the only thing I want is a fully functional Joy-Con that doesn't feel like crap, because the Hori one feels like garbage. The Hori one's mushy. Having rumble in one Joy-Con and not the other feels weird. The weight's a little off. Like it doesn't feel right using just the Hori left Joy-Con. I know there's other reasons to get around this, but this is something where I'm like, Nintendo, I'm willing to throw more money at you to just give me a better left Joy-Con. That's all I want. That's all I want, and I would use my Switch so much more than I already do. But so I mean, if they release a Pro one, that's all I want, Nintendo. Certainly, though, a better screen would be nice, and a little more power would also be good. I don't know if it's a product of just too many games, but the eStore seems to be loading slow for me. My OS doesn't seem as snappy as it used to. It's different things like that. And plus, it'd just be nice to have a little more power, even in docked mode, where you get something a little more comparable to what you see on the other consoles right now. I know it's fairly close, but I think that if they can find a way to get a little more power out the door, that'd be awesome. Now, what I'm curious, and I doubt they would do this, but I wonder... And I'm not saying they would do this, and maybe this report's already been debunked, but it would be crazy if they actually did just a dedicated console without the portable mode. Would actually be would be crazy to me. I don't think they would do that, but that would be nuts. But I think overall, I think it's great. I think expanding the product portfolio is more accepted now than it was, right? Through iterative systems, PC hardware upgrades, streaming, so on and so forth. I think that consumers are finally to a point where they're more comfortable making purchase decisions based on a portfolio of products and finding what fits their needs the best. And I think Nintendo, again, is smart in saying, hey, we've still got legacy users that we want to move into the Switch ecosystem, as well as saying, hey, we've got current users that are probably willing to buy a higher powered system, just like we all did with the new... I bought 2 new 3DSs when they came out, just because it was new Nintendo and I love Nintendo things. I know people don't think that I love Nintendo things because I've complained about the Switch quite a bit, but I do. I love Nintendo things. And so, it's been great to see. I'm just so surprised at the overall, kind of level of just reactions to all of these things, right? So I don't know. Overall, I think it's been a good week to see Nintendo come out with some really nice announcements. I thought Sony came out with some really strong announcements, right? It was a nice surprise, a little 20-minute thing here and there. And I just think, overall in the state of gaming right now and how gaming's coverage is, everyone wants to overreact to everything. And, hope maybe this podcast is going to be a little boring for some people looking for those extra hot takes. But, I just... There are going to be some things that get me heated. I am passionate about video games as a hobby. And there are going to be some things that absolutely mind boggle me, but this isn't one of them. Like, this is pretty standard stuff and pretty par for the course. And so, it's fine for me. So anyway, that's episode number 53. Thanks for listening. If, apologize. I'm a little under the weather here today. Something's been going around the house. And if you need to find us, twitter.com/RetroGameFix. I think Mitch and I are going to get on for another Retro Jones podcast here soon, maybe talk about some of the streaming stuff, some of the stuff Mitch has got going on. He's got some crazy pinball projects that are going through some of the final stages. And that'd be awesome to get him on to talk about more on that. So until next time, until we have more gaming news to chat about, my name is Mike, and this is Serial at Night. See you.